Welcome to the Dreamboat. Remember, you can join the DRI for just £30 a year. You get access to more content, including videos and discounts for our events. It's a great way of finding out more about our work, joining our dream community, and supporting this podcast. Details in the show notes and at driccpe.org.uk/membership. Welcome to the Dreamboat podcast, a place where we talk about everything dreamy, all you wanted to know about dreams and where you might find some answers. My name is Dave Billington, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also director of the Dream Research Institute. And I'm joined by fellow psychotherapist Laura Payne.
Hello, I'm Laura Payne, and I'm also part of the Dream Research Institute. And we're called the Dreamboat because we are recording our podcast overlooking the beautiful canal barges here at Little Venice in London.
We'll be looking at dreams, talking to guest experts, and answering your questions.
Now, let's get on with the episode.
Hi, Dave Billington here again. Just reminding you that this is part B of our Dream Lab episode for Series 3 of the Dreamboat. We wanted to spend a bit more time with our dreamers, Yaz and Damien, so we've put this out in 2 parts. I hope you enjoy this part B of the Dreamboat's Dream Lab with dreamer Damien Moore.
So I'm going to welcome now our next Dream Lab guest, Damien Moore. Damien, many thanks for joining us on the Dreamboat, and over to you to hear about your dream for this week's Dream Lab.
Okay, so to give you a bit of background on this, it was a dream that I had when I was about 14 years old, definitely between the ages of 14 and 16. So I just moved house and I remember that much. But I'd asked a question of my subconscious, if you like, to describe whether you needed light to have a dream and whether you could dream in colour or black and white. And I know from listening to your podcast that is something you've already answered, that you do dream in colour because you spoke about the alchemy stuff. So yes, but at the time I had no idea. And the striking thing about the dream was how unequivocally it answered that question. But the other thing was, do you need light? And so what I did, I went to bed, made this, thought about the question, and then I put on, I think it was a tea towel as a blindfold, and then went to sleep. And the dream, so there basically I had 2 dreams, sort of uninterrupted. And the first one was totally in black and white. It was a Laurel and Hardy movie, effectively. It was like a mini movie. And Laurel and Hardy, I think everyone must know who they are, but they were around at I think between the 20s and 40s, all black and white movies. And in my dream, they were pushing a piano up a spiral staircase, and with all the sort of slapstick, it's very typical of them as a comedy duo. And it was very funny, and it was silent as well. That was another interesting thing. It was completely silent, and that was sort of emphasized by the fact that any dialogue came onto the screen, my dreamscape, entirely dominated it, in the way that used to happen on the silent movies in black and white, with a black background, a white border, and white letters giving the dialogue. And anyway, on they went with the shenanigans all the way up to this top of this staircase. And at the top of the staircase, there was a king sat in this ridiculous high throne, and guards on either side. And he looked very cross. And immediately, I know from listening to podcasts, it's some kind of the fairy tale thing, the myth, whatever, that this was someone they had to entertain to make him laugh. He looked very, very angry. And then, so characteristically, Ollie, the fat one, looked towards Stan as if it was his job to make the king laugh. And Stan took off his hat and ruffled his hair and started to cry, which is what he does. And then the screen went black and the dialogue came up. Did you hear about the king who burped and issued a royal pardon? And that was like a joke from, I don't know where I heard it from, but anyway, it was like something from a cracker, a really bad joke. But I found it hilarious in my dream. The king obviously didn't. And the dream ended with Laurel and Hardy rolling down this spiral staircase with the piano falling after them, splintering away. And I actually heard the sound of laughing, and that was the first. Oh, the drum roll back that broke the sounds as well. It was so that was odd. Suddenly there was this ridiculous staccato drum roll as off they went, and I was laughing. I must have sort of been partially awake because I could hear myself laughing. Other than previously I'd been just viewing it, and there I was, I could hear that, and then the dream totally changed. It didn't immediately go into another dream. There was again a full screen dreamscape, and it was just the most beautiful blue sky with a thin crescent moon, sort of royal blue. Is sort of what I don't know, really beautiful. Not the kind of blues you see in real life, really, I guess. But anyway, and then 3 stars. Very bright stars. And that stayed, it just stayed there for a while. And I was sort of awestruck by this, how beautiful it was. And there was the answer to my question, I guess, black and white and colour. But then another dream started. Try and keep this one short, but it was strange itself. I suddenly, and I wanted to ask you about this actually at the end, I was sat on a step as a young boy, and I was actually in the dream this time. So I wasn't watching it. I was in the dream, and I was sat on the step in Moser Road, where the first house, the house I was born, and we had an entry, very Coronation Street, sort of cobble street entry, and I was sat on the step, and I had my dog, the dog from the time I was actually having the dream. So it was a huge Doberman Pinscher, black and tan, and that was sat on my right, and from my left, a bear suddenly was walking towards me, and this too was a beautiful bear. It was scary, but it wasn't, because it had a red collar, and it was sort of ambling towards, very benign, and just ambling towards it, twice as big as, it wasn't like a grizzly bear, huge. It was about twice as big as my dog Hermit, who was a huge Doberman, but wouldn't make a very big bear. And but I knew that I was more worried about Hermit, because I knew he was very aggressive with other dogs, and he was afraid of nothing. So in my dream, Hermit started to growl, and the bear didn't look in the slightest bit phased, kept on coming towards me, and it was quite scary. So normally I would wake up at this stage, but I didn't. I found myself suddenly shifted to the front of the house, which is basically a view over the Manchester University playing fields. Well, there's a wall before it, but there's nothing actually to see apart from the range of sky. And in the sky, there was a mushroom cloud, like a nuclear atomic bomb. And then the cloud started to move towards me, and from within the cloud, there came an image of Red Square. And again, the colours were just incredible, just beautiful colours. And from Red Square, from the cloud, a horde of what you call Cossacks came, thousands of Cossacks came running towards me, waving their sabres. And but again, I wasn't scared. I don't know why. I just thought, I was just, again, awestruck by the beauty of everything. And that was it. I woke up, and my questions were all answered. I still had the blindfold on, so no light required. I dreamt in vivid color and in total black and white. So it's as you know, but it was, and the thing is, it's just nice to know that I had those questions so specifically answered by a dream.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, that you can just ask the question and the answers come while you sleep. That's wonderful. Can I just ask, Damien, when was it that you had this dream?
So this was, I just moved into a new house from Manchester, one part of Manchester to another. This is in Charles. So I was aged about 13. I was 13 years old, 13 to 14. Stayed in that house till we were 17. So sometime in that period. So adolescence, I guess. Mm.
And were there any particular preoccupations from waking life that you think are reflected in the dream? Obviously, there's the questions you were asking, but just thinking about Laurel and Hardy and maybe that whole first scenario, the silent film, and nuclear bombs and or mushroom cloud anyway. Didn't say it was nuclear, and Cossacks and Russia and all that. Was that a preoccupation of yours?
No, I don't know why the images that came. I guess there's a preoccupation for everyone. The time of the Cold War, when it was a long time ago. When was that? It would be in the 70s or 80s, maybe. I don't know. So, and yes, so there was that sort of preoccupation generally, but I wouldn't say that I was particularly worried about anything like that. And Laurel and Hardy, I'm a big fan. I think they're very funny, still do. But no reason. It just seemed like I was surprised with the creativity of the subconscious to be able to come up with the scenarios that just were able to clearly make me remember that it was black and white because it was a black and white movie, and clearly remember the colors because it was just so striking. So.
Yeah, I think that's what strikes me. Dave and I often talk, as you know, about lucid dreaming and some of the control techniques. But this is a bit more than that. I was thinking, Dave, it's interesting, as Damien quite rightly says, about the subconscious and how we can communicate with it directly. We might not necessarily have to put a tea towel over our eyes. I love that bit, Damien. But it's interesting how you can ask questions of the dream.
Yeah. I guess that's the main thing here, and how exciting that is. But I'm wondering as well, as you talk about it, there's so much detail in there, and the subconscious. There's this idea that the unconscious meets us with the same attitude with which we approach it. I think it was a Carl Jung idea. So it's like you ask the question, there's a response, but it's not just yes or no. There's all of this other stuff. There's humor, there's fun, there's feeling, there's a joke, which is great.
Yeah, and I wonder why though. That's the next question was, if this can be so detailed, but without any really need. It could have just had a black and white and then color, and just the question would be answered. But instead, there were these, I guess we say meaningless, but entertaining, and will make me remember. And I do wonder afterwards, after listening to you guys talking on the podcast again, I was thinking, well, why is it a spiral staircase ascending? And then you start thinking, well, then you start to think, are you reading stuff that it actually isn't important, isn't there, or wasn't intended to be? What do the colors mean, the different colors or anything? But I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it just answered the question in a lovely way that I asked. And I did try asking other questions, and they've been less direct. And some things I've had to really think about before I understood and answer. So, it isn't always, but that one was striking because the first time I experimented it, and it worked. So very, pleased with it.
I'm intrigued also about the colours. I'd like to come back to that. But also you asked a direct question of the dream, which lucid dreamers often do, and get some interesting answers. A lot of people like Robert Wagner and Dr. Nigel Hamilton talk about the notion of lucid dreaming as an inquiry and what you can discover about not just the unconscious, but the collective unconscious. What I like that somehow or other, the collective unconscious has come back to your question, do you need light for a dream? And it's played around with it for you. But also, do you need sound for a dream? So it hasn't just gone with light, it's also gone with sound. And there's something about, I've heard people often call it the cosmic sense of humour. There is something about a cosmic sense of humour that feels at work here in some way for me.
Yes, I guess that has appeared in other dreams as well. Yes, absolutely. And I did wonder as well, was it, with the way things are at the moment, I thought, was it portentous? Was it because of the sun and the constellation, or what appeared to be a constellation? I was wondering, was it? But then, if it was wasted on a schoolboy who didn't know anything about the stars at the time. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that we have premonitions as such in dreams personally.
I was wondering about what it reflects about that 13-year-old boy, the attitude and the feelings that you're bringing into it, and how that gets reflected back in images. For example, what is it about challenging? Well, not maybe it wasn't challenging, or was it trying to entertain this very stern king? And we always ask. It's one of the kind of lenses you can look through a dream at is where do all of these parts and characters exist in you? What parts of you are they? And was there something in that boy that you were who felt like there was this sort of stern, in alchemy they call it the ruling principle, this idea that you must not question, you must obey, and you are an underling into something like that. And the attempt is to entertain and to try and do something funny, and in this case it ends up with just tumbling back down the stairway.
That's actually very interesting. Again, I heard someone say they respond to when you raise something that's true, your body responds, and that makes me yeah. So yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. It would be my dad.
Sure. Yeah.
One of those.
And of course, that's often being the person who holds that king-like position of authority. Yeah.
The sense of power. It's very much, and as Dave said, it's very much, the king is very much an alchemical figure, and represents. So it's obviously an image that's rich. It's got layers and layers of meaning through it.
The dog that was sat beside me, Hermit, was a dog that my dad brought home from. It was the owners had moved off to Australia, and I really always get on very well with animals generally, but particularly with any dogs that have come into our house, and lots of them have. And so he became my dog, and he didn't get on with my dad at all. But nor did I at the time, and there was that whole awful dynamic. And those 4 years, I ended up leaving home when I was 17, I guess that. It makes sense that, despite all the humour, the things did, the whole family life was completely destroyed then.
Almost like a bomb went off in it, maybe.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of imagery of power, isn't there, of this? We've got the king, and we've got bomb, and here you are trying to have power over the dream by sort of dictating whether it's going to be in black and white or colour. So there's an expression of that teenage power, which, as you say, your father might have either usurped or it became oppressive. There's something about your psyche exploring the notion of power. And I was thinking, if we were going to do a Freudian reading of this, what associations are there? You talked about the association with Hermit, the dog. I mean, what associations did you have, do you think, at the time with the bear, for instance? Because it wasn't a large bear, was it? It wasn't an intimidating bear. It felt quite sort of puppy-like or cub-like.
I don't know. I didn't quite know what to make of the bear. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be vicious or not. It seemed, as I say, benign. But I wasn't comfortable with it getting too close, really. So I was hoping it would just sort of amble on past, but it wasn't going to. So it's time to, and I'm not sure whether it was lucid either. You're talking about lucid dreaming. I have had lucid dreams since, and around about the same time, actually, a bit later in my 16, I had a series of flying dreams, which was just incredible, and that was how I escaped from things. So I didn't have to wake up. I didn't have to change the dream scenario. I would just fly off, and I literally learned. I learned to fly over several dreams, lasting probably over a year, going from being able to just fly a few meters, starting in the same place, by the way, in Moseley Road, in that entry. In that, so that's maybe I've heard you talk about the safe place or something like that. That's where that series of dreams started from. And so
in terms of associations, what would you associate with the bear now as an animal?
Russia, I guess. So they've got the red square again. I don't know whether that might be connected to that. And the red collar, it could be again the same thing. But
yes, because you were talking about the bear having a red collar as well, and obviously, red was the scene of the sound of, and still is, part of the Russian or the former Soviet Union flag. I'm also intrigued about the notion of 3 stars, and I wondered what you, Dave, made of the notion of 3 stars. I was suddenly thinking of the 3 kings in the biblical story of Christmas, but I don't know.
Following yonder star.
Exactly.
In the Jungian framework, 3 is often seen as the present of spirit, the presence of the self beyond the self, something transpersonal coming in, that connection to that consciousness. And in a way, in that same framework, the moon is seen as a symbol of the soul in that way, something that reflects the light of the source, and connects us with something beyond ourselves. Which, in a way, you can say dreams do that too. They connect us to something beyond ourselves.
I just interrupt for a second there, because I wanted to ask a question of you guys because one of the things that came out of the dream, one of the questions was about your consciousness in the dream. Why was I watching the first dream and participating in the second one, and wondering where my consciousness was at this stage? What's the separation between the consciousness and the subconscious, and why dreams have this different perspective where you can be very much in a dream and feel actually vulnerable. I remember just very quickly, it was a very short dream, but because I wanted to get out of it very quickly. But it was a dream where I was getting on a bus, and this is something that recurs a lot. But and I went up the stairs. It was a double-decker bus, and I went up the stairs. But as I was going up the stairs, this other passenger got on, and it was a 7-foot giant wearing just black coat with no head, just hair, long hair, and like a demon of some sort. It was terrifying. And it came up the stairs too, and it sat behind me. And I'd asked, I think at that time, about whether you could feel anything in dreams. And I felt fear anyway, but I was thinking about actually touch. And I heard the voice of this thing say, "What are you looking at?" And it was like some, I don't know, horrible bully. But it literally grabbed me by my collar, and I could feel that in the dream. It was terrifying. I'm not easily scared of things, but that was horrible. And I just, I went, "You're not real," and woke up. That was like, I did no chance of flying off or anything like that. It was utterly terrifying. And I was so glad to be able to just wake up like that. And again, my question had been answered. I definitely felt that someone had got a hold of me. That was quite frightening thought that can happen. But yes, it's not always light.
In sort of partial answer to the question, I guess, because I mean the real answer is I don't know. But to explore the question a little bit, I think of it as an easy way of, or a simpler way of looking at dreams is that dreams aren't just dreams. There's lots of different kinds of dreams, and there's lots of different kinds of experiences in dreams. And we often talk about dreams as being something happening in our heads. But it's not just that. There is the part of a dream or the type of dream that is images in the head. There's the type of dream that is a memory or a version of a memory. And there are dreams which are more embodied. And there are people with aphantasia who don't have a mind's eye, who don't see images in their mind's eye, who still dream. They dream experiences and they dream narratives. So there's all these different kinds of dreams. And it feels like what you were given in answer to your questions was, experiences of these different kinds of dreams. When I think about that first one with Laurel and Hardy, psychologically, we talk about projections a lot, that we hold images of people, we hold images as in ideas, complex, three-dimensional images of people, of places, of concepts in our heads. And then we project those out onto the world. We expect people to be who we think they are in our heads, and we're very surprised when they change. So if you think about watching a film, it's like it's a projection. It's something where an experience is being seen as just out there. It's not me. It's something that's just out there. And then in the second part of that dream, it's immersive, and it feels more about you. It's your home. It's a view, it's your dog. And then there's these other elements as well. And it feels so embodied, where you are feeling the vividness of the colors and feeling the intensity of this dream, and have this real sense of being between the growling dog and the energy of this strong bear that's over there. So it's really something that's quite embodied, grounded. Really kind of in the part of you that lives in the real world. And there are other kinds of dreams as well. There are dreams where you watch yourself from a distance. You might be kind of like an out-of-body experience. You can see yourself going through something in a dream. And dreams where you're not yourself at all, where it might be something that's happening in your life, but you are like a character, acting as another person within that space. So there's so many different kinds. Laura, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, was enjoying actually hearing your sort of take on it. I was left thinking with an area that you and I often go to, Dave, just the whole notion of human consciousness, how little we know about it, and how often in the dream world we get to explore aspects of human consciousness that we're often completely unaware of. And there's this sense of all, if I think of the dream in three parts, we have the black and white Laurel and Hardy section where you're almost like an audience member. And then we have the, which also has the king as well. Mm-hmm. And then we have the bit where you then walk into this landscape, which is so beautiful, which feels divine. We're into some form of, as Dave said, transpersonal, divine consciousness of some kind.
The numinous landscape. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it becomes really personal, and you're then an actor in the scene, and you are actively, as Dave said, personally and bodily involved in the third part of the dream. And so I'm just in awe myself of the different aspects of human consciousness that we're not always fully aware of, playing out in these separate sections. And in the end, Jungians would say you're all of that. There's both your personal consciousness and the collective consciousness. And I think these three beautiful dreams from, adolescence, enable, are bringing something about different aspects of power, different aspects of human consciousness to life, which for a teenager, what an amazing experience. I can see why it's stuck with you all of your life, because it is, to use the word again, incredibly powerful.
Yes. Yes, that word numinous made me think of what's his name? Oliver Sacks' book, Hallucinations, where he talks about his obsession with the color indigo at that time, in his early 20s. No, maybe a bit older than that, actually. He took a long time, I think, to grow up, Oliver Sacks himself. He was like 30, something like that. And he wanted to see indigo. He became obsessed with that idea. And he actually used a concoction of drugs, I think, to in order to see this, and as in LSD and some other amphetamines or something. And he said that he saw this indigo splash onto the wall in front of him, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and he was awestruck by that. And that, although I read that later, it reminded me of my own dream and how I felt on seeing this beautiful. And that word, I think he used the very same word, and I had to look it up, and it was something like sacred. And yes, it made me think about that beautiful blue, which indigo is also a different form of blue. So maybe that's a heavenly color, I think. And he only ever saw it in real life in lapis lazuli or something like that in Egyptian art, or whatever. But the beauty of that it will stick in my mind. Absolutely,
I'm sure. Well, it's another idea about consciousness and the different ways that consciousness is expressed and experienced. And again, it's sort of Jungian. Dr. Hamilton talks about this quite a lot, but that we have the kind of more complex versions of dreams that we see, and it's about everything that's mixed up together, our personalities and our memories and things we've been told and ideas that we have about ourselves, and that creates all these narratives and characters and all complicated things. But as you maybe work through some of that, and as you're able to have, as you have been doing for a long time, these kind of dialogues with your own subconscious, in the simplicity of it, there becomes a kind of a layer of consciousness, an experience of consciousness, which is just about light. And, light that's connected to feeling. So that experience of not only seeing, but fully experiencing that beautiful blue color, or in Oliver Sacks's case, the indigo color. It's something about, this is the base layer of consciousness, you can put it that way. The simplest expression of pure being within ourselves, without all the nonsense that's always going around in our very complicated heads. Would you agree with that, Laura?
I think that's really, really lovely. Thanks. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, and that reminded me of the end, the quite astonishing end to my series of flying dreams, when because I was getting better and better and flying higher and higher in these dreams, and then at the end of one of these, I felt myself sucked off into space, and I just went flying at this incredible speed, and glanced back and saw the Earth just disappearing, and became terrified, and stopped and felt myself pulled back, and then I woke up and I thought, and I was so angry with myself that I'd been a coward, and I wanted to know what would have happened. What would have happened if I'd have carried on? So I asked that the next night, and the next night I had the same dream. The same thing happened, and I just went flying to space. I just let it go. I thought, well, if I lose my mind or whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to just go for it. And I just ended up in this, just floating in space, with this starscape just amongst millions of stars, and with just a tinkling of bells and a sense of perfect peace. I was just thinking how Lucinda would hate it, because it's like wind chimes, and she absolutely hates those things. But anyway, that was just beautiful. I wouldn't care if I never woke up after that one, but I did, and yeah, and then the flying dreams unfortunately stopped in that sense, but I have been able to call on that superpower, as you sometimes call it, in dreams, to escape situations or to look at something. The last time it happened was in when I was dreaming about this very strange cityscape, and there was a beautiful, like a Gaudi-esque orange dome that was lit up from the inside, like translucent. And I just thought, who lives there? And I realized I was dreaming. And so, and it was strange. It was the first time I felt a kind of strange energy boost, and flew up to have a look, because I knew that I could fly and have a look inside. And I just went up and looked through the window of this dome, and there was just a single person in there with a strange yellow hair, wandering around, looking it was very disappointing, if you like. But the fact that I could do that was incredible. So,
yeah, I think it is a superpower, and it's great. It's fun to see it that way.
It is. It's probably something you shouldn't. You should. I heard someone say they should sit down in a dream rather than flying off and experience.
Well, Damien, thank you very much for bringing your superpowers today, and really enjoyed hearing your adolescent dream. It's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And so thank you for coming to DreamLab.
Thank you both. Lovely to meet you.
Well, obviously, thanks to Damien Moore for his contribution to the second part of DreamLab. And so both dreamers that we featured over the past two sessions have obviously come up with some very interesting material. Dave, what do you take away from Damien's dreams?
I tell you, one of the things that I'm sitting with right now is that we probably need to have an episode on the planes of consciousness, which is one of the models that we use that we haven't covered yet, and maybe have somebody come on and talk about that, because it was really fun to look at the different parts of himself that Damien might be able to see in his dreams, and the very different kinds of experiences that he's having and has been having since he was a teenager. So that was one of the things where he was, I love when good questions, which Damien had for his unconscious or his subconscious, lead to answers, but then more questions. I think that's a delightful outcome for that.
Yeah.
What are you sitting with from that, Laura?
Well, we often have lucid dreamers come on here, and obviously you and I have regular conversations with lucid dreamers generally who talk about this notion of control in dreams and how you can pose a question before going to sleep, or actually while you are lucid dreaming, and how there is this sort of other entity that often sits behind the dreaming body, the dreaming self, that has a separate authority in some way. I don't know what you want to call it. Do you want to call it the divine? Do you want to call it God? What are we going to call this entity, for want of a better description, that most regular lucid dreamers encounter? I became intrigued by Damien when he was a kid, innocently playing with this stuff and discovering that there is something else out there
or something else in there, maybe.
That is in there, exactly, that is separate from him but isn't separate from him, whatever or however you want to find words for this. And I know scientists regularly get a bit scared around this part of it, but a lot of dream scientists are also fascinated by it. And I was left with that as the debate that you and I have encountered before.
Yeah, I wonder also about, there's a kind of a principle of opposites that seems to go on in consciousness. And again, I know I bang on about it all the time, but Carl Jung talked about it. And the idea of control. And I'm always fascinated with lucid dreamers. There's a certain type of lucid dreamer sometimes who really is focused on the control. I can do what I want in my dream. It's like, okay, well, that can be really fun. But also there's that part of me that goes, why this big need for control? And the principle of opposites, I think, also makes it, when you think that you're in control, you create the opposite, or you encounter the opposite within there. So there's that part. Yeah. And is it part of you? Is it something beyond you? It certainly feels like it's beyond you when you encounter it, which goes, oh, so you think you're in control, do you?
Exactly. And I know I mentioned it, and I'm always intrigued by this, the notion of a cosmic humor, that there is some divine humor also that seems to come in and play, as you say, in these moments. So you think you're in control, do you? It's quite amusing. Yeah. But I loved it. And and also the fruitfulness and the power of the adolescent imagination, like children's imagination. It's so creative. It's so fertile, with all the connotations that sit with that. No, it was rich with wonderful material and big questions about the nature of consciousness, which I know you and I always enjoy a good debate over that one.
Something for us to chew on, and hopefully for anyone to be interested in their own inner worlds as well. That's so exciting, I think. But yeah, really wonderful to be able to talk to two really generous dreamers, generous with sharing their dreams, generous with sharing their time, and being authentic about themselves and their experiences, and kind of really modeling that for all of us. So we really, really appreciate that. Of course, Dream Lab can't happen without dreamers. So for anyone who has a dream that they think they'd like to share, they'd like to explore, please do get in touch and let us know if you have a dream you'd like to share on our next Dream Lab.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, all the ways of contacting us are obviously in the show notes. So from me, sweet dreams.
And from me, I'll say keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.
So thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast, and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show notes for links, or find us on Instagram and on our Facebook page and on our website at driccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or you would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £30 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for all of our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with latest dream research news, and we'll also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.